another session of book reviews with Mr. Elrod. Today we are going to be looking at a book that, really for a lot of people is a book that they talk a lot about in kind of just general casual conversation, or at least you might hear it thrown around in general casual conversation, especially if we're talking about politics or if we're talking about economics, especially as it pertains to government spending and involvement in the economy and things along those lines. But it is a book that is very well known, very well renowned. I've never really heard anybody speak negatively about this book, even those maybe who wouldn't necessarily agree with the ideas that are presented in it. And, I guess I would say that maybe I haven't spent a whole lot of time investigating why that might be. Maybe just because it's, considered, as far as I can tell, considered maybe a classic as it in regards to a novel trying to address what the author sees as detrimental policies and kind of almost looking to foresee the future if we continue down a particular road. And certainly if people in society decide to behave as those in the book do, at least those who would be considered maybe the heroes of the book. And so today we are doing a book review of Atlas Shrugged. So you can see Atlas Shrugged is a relatively large book in this particular version of it. It's like 1,168 pages. Took me quite a while to get through, mostly because of the amount of time that I could devote to reading it. So I actually started listening to it in my car, and then when my library time was up with the CDs, then I gave it back, and I went and got the book, and then I checked out the book several times. So it took quite a while to get through. Now, from the beginning, Ayn Rand, as far, me personally, I think that the book is well written. I think that it is an interesting story. I'll talk maybe a little bit about the philosophy of it and the ideas presented in just a minute. But just from a writing perspective, thought it was well written. Thought the story was interesting. I thought the characters were interesting. So that's really what kept me engaged throughout the entire book. So, and really kind of the size and scope of it, it's almost like one of those seminal achievements in life. And that sounds kind of sad to say, doesn't it? But you've heard, I've heard a lot about it, talked with people about it. I've never read it. And so it was one of those things, where I just kind of decided I'd like to get out there and see what all the fuss is about. Now, I will say that Ayn Rand probably could have cut down on the book by about half if she had decided to not be so descriptive. There are just pages upon pages of describing specific events and specific people and the situation they find themselves in, or the landscape that they're seeing, or their emotions, or whatnot. And so that, I felt like the story could have moved a lot faster and wouldn't have necessarily taken up so much if she had gotten to that. And I still think the story would have been interesting. In fact, I really felt like some of those extended passages detracted from the story itself. Maybe I guess just as a writing style. I haven't read any of her other books. I plan to try to pick those up here in the near future. But I really felt like that. It would have made the story move on a bit longer. And this isn't necessarily a description, but there's a 60-page. John Galt, the character, has a 60-page monologue. Where basically he's trying to express the ideas that he had developed and why he was frustrated with what was going on in society, and so he's just professing those over the radio. But it's 60 pages, and it's nothing but him talking. And so, just from a story perspective, that kind of grated on me just a little bit. As far as the ideas that are presented, so they call it the capitalist manifesto. I guess so. Yeah, the idea is, and even in the very end. I do this from time to time. They actually rewrite, I guess, maybe the Constitution as the producers who've gone on strike are coming back into society. It says, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of production and trade. And so, the whole premise of the story being that the producers feel like they are being used, and that the government and those they call the moochers or the looters, their system couldn't exist except that the producers allow it to exist because they continue to work even though they're put under these various conditions and whatnot. And so, to that extent, sure, capitalist manifesto, let trade and commerce continue on unabated by government and regulation and whatnot. So sure, that's fine. And I find myself agreeing with a lot of the premise that is being proposed. Some of the things that were kind of interesting, maybe a little bit off for me in terms of the ideas that were proposed within the book. Mostly this idea, and as far as I think I read it on a little bit. Ayn Rand, I believe, is an atheist, is a Christian person. Some of the things that are the way that religion is kind of put out there frustrated me a little bit. They talked about not serving others, and they're not there to serve others, which fine. Nobody. I don't believe anybody should necessarily be compelled to do things for other people. But I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, and doing things out of a sense of charity and a sense of love for other people. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, and I really felt like in some parts of the book it came across that way, that she was coming down pretty hard on. It was almost like the slavery mentality of religion, and how it forces you to be subservient either to the religion or to other people. So sure, we might use some of that terminology in terms of we submit ourselves to God and the things that He would want for our life. And Jesus many times in the Bible talks about we're here to serve other people, and a lot of that just has to do with an expression of love as opposed to necessarily submitting your being to another person just for the sake of submission. So I would have a couple of bones to pick in that area. But again, the broader kind of conversation of industry and government regulation, I agree with most of that. Probably to me, what was most striking about the book, it almost seemed prophetic in the way that the conversation of those who were on the side of the government, whether they be the people who worked for government or those who wanted to use the government in order to not even necessarily manipulate the economy, but the idea that the corporations should be used to provide social benefits. And they talk about the social good and the idealist and things along those lines. To me, that was really interesting because in the world that we live in today, I feel like the vocabulary and the talking points that those people in government or those like James Taggart or Hank Rearden's wife, I can't remember her name, the language that they use as far as social responsibility in terms of social good and all these other kinds of things, to me was almost exactly the same type of language that is used today by a lot of people in terms of why, or in terms of the purpose of business and in terms of the type of attitude that business should have towards the workers or social responsibility and things along those lines. So I thought that was really interesting, and like I said, almost prophetic. There's headlines the other day, and I went back and just to make sure I understood it, looked it up. It was about Jeff Bezos and talking about how greedy Jeff Bezos was, and various people putting pressure on him to give more money to charity. And I was looking at this one article and saying that he's giving $2 billion, but as a percentage of his overall net worth, and that's barely a drop in the bucket. He has greater social responsibility to society and things along those lines. So it was really interesting that it's we're still having that is part of the conversation. That's exactly what Ayn Rand essentially is warning against in the novel, and the producers getting tired of that kind of talk and that kind of behavior. Again, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, out of their own desire to help other people. If they want to give, then fine, but I don't necessarily think that there needs to be any pressure that's put on them socially or governmentally or otherwise to do that with their money. It's their money, and they should be able to do with it what they want, as long as it's not infringing on other people. You think about the kind of the broader scope of things, and there's been conversation about the working conditions of people at Amazon and things like that. But you think of what Amazon has done as a business, and we as consumers have products that we can get faster, and it's pushed other competitors like Walmart, even though they're a brick and mortar, it's pushed them in terms of the web-based businesses and whatnot to improve. So we as consumers have benefited from that. Typically, we can get some cheaper products. We have more options, and we can look online and see what the cheaper options are, and so we have a lot more options that way. You think about how wealthy people have become, or either through investing or through companies that invest in Amazon as a part of their overall stock and retirement portfolio, and then the jobs that have been created as a result of the expansion of Amazon. So, there's with that, I think it seems like people don't take into consideration the bigger picture as far as what these people do and the way it causes the economy to expand, all the people they can benefit. Again, we can have a conversation about either working conditions or wages or whatever, but you always need to do that within the context of all the other things that are going on and how things might be otherwise. So, and I know that's a different conversation from the book itself, but again, like I said, it was almost prophetic in the type of attitude that people in the book had, the novel had, to the type of attitude that we have. And I guess you could say that it's been a common attitude really since the industrial age, and even you can go back prior to this kind of tension that exists between whether kind of those that are in charge and those the ones that are working. And so there is that tension that exists there. But I was really, really kind of blown away by how close the vocabulary is. So it's really interesting. It takes a while. You got to devote a lot of time to the book. If this is something that sounds interesting to you, I don't necessarily think that I wouldn't call it boring. It is going to take a while to get through. You probably could just skip large chunks because basically it's just a description of either the scenery or the emotions that somebody's feeling, or somebody else's face as they're talking to them. So that to me was kind of odd and drug a little bit, but I'm glad that I did it. It's one of those, it's like I climbed a mountain and I'm stuck my flag at the top of that mountain, and I've achieved that objective in my life, and so I'm glad that I did it. I might go on and read some more Ayn Rand later on, but who knows? We'll see. So I know that I kind of rambled on there for a little bit, but I thought there was a lot of different things I could tie in there. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you get a chance, pick up Ayn Rand. It's not only a good mental exercise, but a good physical exercise. Carry that around. Might put on some muscle. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, and as always, I hope to see you next time.